It is dusk on a residential street in Japan. Standing perfectly still beneath a telephone pole is a woman. She wears a long coat, and the lower half of her face is covered by a white surgical mask, a common sight during cold and flu season. She appears entirely ordinary, beautiful even. That is, until you approach her in the dark, and she slowly pulls the mask away. She steps out of the shadows, blocking your path, and asks a single question. Watashi, kirei. Am I pretty? If you say no, she produces a blade, scissors, a knife, or a sickle, and kills you on the spot. If you say yes, she reveals a mouth sliced open from ear to ear, a raw wound. She asks again, kore demo, even like this? If you scream, you die. If you say no, you die. And if you say yes, she takes her blade and cuts your mouth open to match hers. This is the story of Kuchisake-onna, the Slit-Mouthed Woman. The horror of the encounter relies entirely on a psychological trap. It forces a victim into a scenario where every conventional human response, politeness, honesty, or fear, guarantees a violent, inescapable end. During the summer of 1979, this strict set of rules escaped the realm of folklore. Across Japan, children whispered these exact survival conditions to one another, because an estimated 99% of them believed the threat was walking their actual neighborhoods. Looking at the faces of 1970s Japanese schoolchildren, you can see the exact demographic at the center of the panic. The fear triggered a massive logistical response. Teachers organized mandatory group escorts for the walk home. Parent-teacher associations formed safety patrols to watch the streets. In the most terrified districts, local governments shut down entire schools to keep students inside. The panic eventually spilled from playground rumor into police records. On June 21st of that year, police in Himeji arrested a 25-year-old woman wandering the streets at night. She was wearing a white surgical mask and carrying a kitchen knife. A single ghost story managed to paralyze the daily routines and infrastructure of a highly industrialized nation. To understand how that happens, we have to look at the anatomy of the monster herself. The earliest traces of this legend date back to the Edo-period. Originally depicted as a kitsune, a shape-shifting fox spirit, her torn mouth was a grotesque trick to terrify men, warning them away from wandering the red light districts at the wrong hour. Over the centuries, that trickster spirit mutated into a story of severe domestic trauma. When her samurai husband discovered she was unfaithful, he took a blade and sliced her face open, asking his vain wife, "Who will think you're beautiful now?" Shigeru Mizuki, Japan's leading authority on supernatural folklore, elevated her to an official entry in Japanese academia. He gave her a dual classification, an onryo, a vengeful spirit born of rage, and a yokai, a permanent fixture of the natural world. This dual nature is the source of her lasting terror. She is the victim of an intimate act of human cruelty and an inescapable force of nature that can never be put to rest. But the children of 1979 did not simply accept that she was inescapable. Instead of freezing in terror, 10-year-olds across the country actively engineered an entire folklore of survival to fight back. They developed tactics to break her script. If she asked, "Am I pretty?" the optimal response was to answer, "Ma ma desu," "you're average." This ambiguity supposedly confused her, buying the victim a few crucial seconds to run. They also mapped out physical distractions. Children carried bekkoame, a traditional hard candy, in their pockets. Throwing the sweets at her feet exploited a supernatural compulsion, forcing her to stop the chase and pick them up. Other neighborhoods passed around a verbal repellent. Shouting the word pomade 3 times would drive her away. The logic relied on an alternate origin story, weaponizing the traumatic memory of the hair wax worn by the surgeon who botched her face. The most sophisticated counterattack was purely psychological. When she asked her trap question, a child could reverse the dynamic by asking, "Am I handsome?" Without a scripted answer for this, she would hesitate. These playground rumors were actually a highly organized defense mechanism. A vulnerable generation of children was working together to hack a seemingly unanswerable question. Decades later, oral literature researcher Ikura Yoshiyuki analyzed this specific burst of playground creativity. His conclusion suggests the monster was actually a psychological projection of a rapidly changing society. In the late 1970s, Japan experienced a major cultural shift. For the first time, large numbers of young children were being sent to evening cram schools to keep up with intense academic pressures. This forced them to navigate city streets alone, well after dark. Suddenly, these latchkey kids were sharing the sidewalks with unpredictable adults they had never interacted with before. Women heading to jobs in the nightlife districts. Exhausted salarymen stumbling home from bars under the glow of neon signs. The fear of these unfamiliar evening encounters generated Japan's first truly modern urban legend. Kuchisake-onna wasn't passed down from ancestors in a village. She was born spontaneously on the asphalt of a modernizing city. The Slit-Mouthed Woman functioned as a psychological containment vessel. The youth of Japan invented a single, recognizable face to embody the complex, invisible anxieties of their new environment. Yet underneath the sociological data and the playground tactics, the core of the story remains deeply tragic. A woman was mutilated for her beauty, and she returns from the dark to force the living to look at her scars. She does not ask if you are brave. She tests how you react when someone presents you with their irreversible trauma, and asks if that wound makes them less human. That lingering unease has permanently entrenched her in Japanese pop culture. Today, she haunts major anime series, hit video games, and fully realized haunted house attractions in the very city where the panic started. 4 decades have passed since the summer the streets went quiet. The cram schools remain, the neon signs still hum, and the psychological trap is still perfectly set. Somewhere in the dark, she is still waiting to ask her question.